Yo, call me new hardware where I'm hardware. Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to the Game Sketch. Today, and only today, we are here to talk about the Nintendo Switch 2/3D Mario. Now, I figured instead of making, two separate videos about the future of this and that, I decided I'd combine these two topics and make you understand why I think 3D Mario is absolutely happening this year. So, new year, new Switch 2 rumors have started to pop up as they usually do, but it feels like this time we are at the finish line. The Switch is on its 7th year, and the latest report comes through telling us that apparently the Switch 2 is going to be a iterative successor as opposed to something completely new. It's going to, take what happened before, with the Switch, kind of continue it. Apparently, it's going to launch at about $400. Apparently, there also was a Switch Pro at some point, but it got, I guess delayed or pushed back, probably due to the fact that, one, COVID happened, so parts became sparse, for making more consoles and more units and stuff. And at the same, that's probably why the OLED came out instead. And that's honestly probably in the sense that the Switch sold a fuck ton of copies that Nintendo was like, you know what, we can wait a little bit. And Nintendo has had a history, of having their next console be backwards compatible with the last one. Besides GameCube to N64, we had the Wii games, playable with GameCube games. We had the Wii U playable with Wii games, and of course now we will most likely have the Switch backwards compatible with, Switch 1 games if there's a Switch 2, right? And this makes sense to me, right? Especially in this era of digital libraries. If Nintendo wants to continue to have major sales in their console, you need to continue having digital libraries. And I think that's a big reason, why Xbox isn't doing well, right? Because in the generation where building a digital library of games mattered in the Xbox One era versus PS4 era, PlayStation won that by a landslide. And so when people are choosing their next consoles, most people are going to go with the one that has most of their shit on it. Kind of how, like, if you have an iPhone, you're most likely sticking with iPhone. Now, again, the question becomes, what do they do with exclusives, right? Is this going to be right off the bat, every new game is going to come out on one of them? What are they going to do with it? Now, I'm thinking this is going to be a little bit of a PS4 to PS5 situation where, for the first year or two, right, you're going to get mostly games that are going to come out on both, but you are going to have some heavy hitters that only are going to work with the Switch Pro or Switch 2 or whatever, the Switch Ultra, however they're going to market it. And now to enter why I believe Mario's 3D successor will be releasing this year along the Switch 2. So when it comes to new hardware, Nintendo has a history of launching them with a new game, even iterations. I mean, I know the Switch OLED launched alongside Metroid Prime, Metroid Dread, not Metroid Prime. I know the Switch Lite launched with Link's Awakening. Obviously, the Switch launched with a game like Breath of the Wild, right? And you have the Wii U launched with New Super Mario Bros. U. The GameCube launched with, was it Sunshine? It was one of those games that was really early on. But you know what I mean? Nintendo has history of launching their consoles with a major game. I know for the Wii, it was kind of Twilight Princess that had a Breath of the Wild situation where it came out on both. And the only game that makes sense right now to me is 3D Mario. And let's mark why. So reason one, right? I think every one of Nintendo's heavy hitters right now, besides 3D Mario, is in the back still, right? You think of Mario Kart, right? Mario Kart is the big one. That game just wrapped up its DLC, and I think it's still being played a lot worldwide, right? And I don't think it's time yet to drop a Mario Kart 10. Let's call it Mario Kart X for the sake of it. Maybe Mario Kart Tour counts as 9 to Nintendo. And I think, we still need a little bit for it. Then I still think they'd want to bring in an install base of consoles before they launch new Mario Kart on this Switch 2, right? And I also think, in a sense of the DLC just wrapped up, I think you also want that's going to be a game that destroys when it comes out. I don't think launching with a Mario Kart is a smart idea. Now, technically, they did do it with the Switch, right? Mario Kart 8 Deluxe came out, I'd say 2 months after the Switch launch, and that, to all intents and purposes, was a new game for 95% of people that own a Nintendo Switch. Remember, the Wii U sold 13 million units, and 8 million of those people bought Mario Kart 8 originally, which means, right now about 45 or 40 plus million people have played played that game for the first time, really. So while it's not unprecedented for Mario Kart to come near launch, I do think it's gonna be a little bit more before we get a new one. Zelda, I mean, we just had Tears of the Kingdom, right? So I don't think we're getting another 3D Zelda for a hot minute, unless maybe we got a remake, like they remade Ocarina of Time or something. But for the most part, you know, they'd have to actually go back, because they've actually re-released and remade every 3D game. I don't think you're gonna launch new hardware with the 2D Zelda. Mario Wonder just had its go last year, so 2D Mario is off the bench for now. With Smash Bros, I don't think we're seeing one for a while, right? At most, I could see a deluxe edition that has everything wrapped in and maybe a few bows and whistles added to it, maybe some better online, maybe a character or two. I doubt that, because Sakurai seems to be moved on to a different project at this point. But I don't think Smash is anywhere near, and I think we all agree that Smash is probably, I would say, maybe 2 years away from being announced, and then maybe a year later from coming out. So I wouldn't say we're more than 3 to 4 years away from the next Smash. Animal Crossing, again, a game that came out in 2020, and I think those games are definitely a bit later within each Nintendo console's life, so I don't see Animal Crossing coming for another year or two. Maybe, again, and maybe New Horizons will have an HD, deluxe ultra version that has, 60 FPS, better online, all this stuff. And I know, obviously, a lot of people are going to point to Metroid Prime, and I don't think that is a console seller. As much as I love Metroid, and I think it's a great franchise, and, they get great reviews, Metroid Dread was still a 3 to 4 million seller, right? Metroid Prime sold very well. I think it sold like 1 to 2 million copies for Switch, and the old ones sold okay, but they're not that kind of game. They're a game that, like, Nintendo fans love, but you don't sit here and see little Timmy's and, the parents and all that be like, damn, I need that new Metroid game. Splatoon is still getting DLC, right? There are still Splatfests going on for Splatoon 3. We're still getting Side Order, the major DLC, later this year, actually. So Splatoon 3 is off the mark, and that again tells me and leads me to believe 3D Mario is factually next. And the last one, by the way, I would bring up would be Pokemon, right? I know Gen 5 Pokemon remakes are probably going to be this fall, but it's not going to be a new gen Pokemon, which I think is going to be probably a year or two away. But let's get into 3D Mario. So first of all, Odyssey was 7 years ago now. I think that's a really important thing to understand, that 7 years by the time this next Mario will come out that Odyssey was. And also, Mario Odyssey received 0 major DLC, as opposed to even a game like Breath of the Wild that got 2 major expansions and got its sequel 6 years after it came out. I know some people like to point at Bowser's Fury as being a 3D Mario that came out, but that was a side team, and it wasn't really, the same thing. That was using the existing engine. It was probably using a lot of assets. It did have a lot of new assets in it, but you know what I mean. That's not the same thing. Now, what are they gonna do with this next 3D Mario, right? What do you do to evolve the series and make it grow bigger and stronger? There's a few options they can go. They can take the sequel route. So like a Mario 64 2. Mario 64 is one of the biggest names in gaming. It ascends even the console. So I feel like Mario 64 as a naming brand is so massive. They could deadass call it Mario 64 2, make it bigger, make it crazier, make the castle even more fleshed out and everything, and it would sell a bajillion copies if they worked hard on it. A new Mario Sunshine would kind of be interesting. I fuck with the idea of maybe a Sunshine 2 where you revisit that control scheme, right? But you have maybe a giant open island, right? Like no restrictions. You're going all around it. You got boats going to different areas. You got more beaches, more environments. Like you really double down on the summer aesthetic of Sunshine, and you make new mechanics, new environments, and obviously you would make it hella polished this time around. I think a Sunshine 2 would be something that would be really shocking and something that could be incredible if they worked hard on it. There is obviously the elusive Galaxy 3, right, that I think Miyamoto has said time and time again that he'd like to work on, but I do think I'm ready for more new ideas as opposed to revisiting one. Now, a Galaxy 3 could be incredible if they expanded on the idea, maybe with better hardware. You could have galaxies that interconnect more. You could maybe travel planet to planet just by running towards them or doing platforming challenges to getting to more of them. But I don't know. I think as much as I adore Galaxy, I still think they could chill on that for a bit more. 3D Land and World already kind of, have gotten stuff, including Bowser's Fury, so I don't think that style of gameplay will be revisited anytime soon. If anything, I would like if 3D World was like almost marketed as a smaller scale 3D Mario from now on. Like maybe every few years you get a 3D platformer like 3D World where you can play multiplayer with the gang, and the levels are a little more, small scale, but they're not at the same level of a mega 3D Mario. And of course, Odyssey 2 is the big one, right? That's the one that makes the most sense, but the one that also didn't happen. And I'm starting to think we're not getting it in Odyssey 2, right? I would have told you in Odyssey 2 is coming maybe year 2 or even year 3 of the Switch's life. You know, I would have been like, okay, you just got to take the foundation and build on it, right? But it feels like, I think the reason why Odyssey was so incredible is because maybe Nintendo really did pack in every idea they wanted to. I know there's the art book that shows a lot of ideas that didn't go through, right? But for the most part, felt like Nintendo made something they were proud of and something that they just wanted to push to the market and have that as the 3D Mario game that permanently sold on Switch. And while I think there's so much they could still do with the capping mechanic, with just new environments and new missions and stuff, I think Nintendo is the type of company that wants to continue to innovate 3D Mario, and I think Bowser's Fury was our taste of that. In fact, another game that I'd like to point to that I know obviously if you're a big fan of my channel, you'll try to understand here, Sonic Frontiers, right? The idea of an open zone, open world platformer is so interesting to me, right? Just like Bowser's Fury, because, you know, in typical AAA games, right, the biggest problem with these open worlds is like they're filled with padding, you know, the traversal isn't the best, it's kind of whatever, just environments just for to be environments, right? Whereas a platformer being open world is so special and such a good idea because then getting from point A to point B is the journey, right? It's how many fun platforming challenges, you know, are in your way. I could only imagine, could you imagine like 3D Mario in an open world, how massive that would be? Like you find random bosses going around, you get all these crazy platform challenges, maybe some will be upwards in the sky, maybe some are even underground. Like the idea of an open world Mario, like that is just crazy ambitious and is all about the fun of an open world instead of, you know, stuff like quests and side missions and dealing with HP and all that, just pure fun. Everywhere you go, every direction you walk in is going to be something enjoyable, fun, entertaining, and unique. And even, you know, you could have some Metroidvania inclusions. You know, maybe you beat a boss, they give you a special power-up that you're gonna go take to a different area. I feel like there's some ways you can make this innovative and fun enough that like a simple kid could go in and play, just dick around and have a good time, right? Whereas like the people that love to, you know, 100% of these games that grew up with Mario can have so much fun going through these environments and exploring everything. Like I said, give it a bit of, you know, a mix of Odyssey with a mix of Bowser's Fury's open area and just kind of mix those ideas and go crazy with it. And I don't know if Nintendo maybe could fuck with the idea of multiplayer. Again, I do like my 3D Mario's being single player, but maybe if it is open world, maybe you could have place for at least a player or two that could run around in the same environments with you on a different screen online. I don't know. Obviously with Nintendo, you gotta be a little wary of how they handle multiplayer sometimes, but for the most part, this idea of a 3D Mario feels like the next logical step, but that's also why I think it might not happen, because Nintendo isn't always logical. They're innovative and they know what to do better than any of us can. But yeah, that's my theory of why 3D Mario is this year. It feels like it's the only heavy hitter you can have right now to launch with the next Switch. Obviously Nintendo can really do what they want, but I think that's the big one that you launch with, that you could have a crazy marketing cycle that everyone's gonna buy it. Like, you know, that is going to sell out frame one. It's gonna be the Breath of the Wild of the console, where like, you know, it's going to sell with the console and it's gonna sell over time with the console, just because that's the game everyone's gonna look at and that's the game everyone's gonna want to play. But let me know what you think of that idea. Do you think this Switch 2 is happening? Do you think it's Joe Warida? Do you think it's not? Do you think I'm crazy? Let me know what you think. What do you want from the next 3D Mario and all that jazz? Thank you all for watching. You're the best. Of course, I'll see you all next time. Peace out.